So we'll be adding as we said just earlier, I got cut off. We'll be adding this structure so that we can add in new customers as we want. Just like here, once I have this up here, then I can just add in a row here, type in a row here, type in a row here, and I'm adding in new customers. So we're doing that here. Okay, so let's continue. So now you want to build this form and use the typical naming structure. Like this will be this one will be txt name. This one will be txt first name. This one will be txt last name, and so on. So stop the program and build this. And don't forget, and we'll have a button there in the bottom as well. Oops, that didn't work. Okay, and so now we have this structure. It's actually called a structure. Now we have this structure to build a new, or to enter a new customer. Every time we want to create a customer now, we can. Now, it's very simple to do, right? In Excel, you don't really think about creating a new customer. But when you're doing programming, you talk about kind of creating a new customer. In Excel, you just type in a new line. But here, it's a little bit, we say creating a new customer. So how do we do that? So the first line up here, okay, this is in our button click. So we're going to click this button to create the new customer. We're going to enter this information, or maybe not actually, but anyway, we're going to click this button to create a new customer. So what's going to happen? First thing is, we're going to run this statement. Now this statement looks kind of familiar, but there's something different about it. We're using dim. This is the name. As, but this is completely different. What is this? This is, we have used in there things like, the most recent thing we did was as array, but normally we just did integer, or decimal number, or double, or something like that, Boolean maybe. So those were the data types that we had. And we would enter them, we would put those here as integer, for example. Now we're saying as customer, so what does that mean? There is no data type called customer. But actually, that's what you actually just created in this last slide here. When you create this so-called structure, you're creating a new data type. Okay? That's the new part here, is we're creating a new data type called structure. So once we've done that, then we're allowed to say as customer. Now, after you've done that, what's the name of, like, if this was as integer, you might have said like x as integer. So then you could, so x would be the name of your integer, right? And here, the name of our customer is going to be called test customer. Now, when I say name, I'm not talking about the first name or the last name or something. It's just the name of the variable, the first example, rather, of our customer. So, now if you want to give your new customer a first name, this is how you do it. You say, you already created, or declared rather, your test customer, and now you say test customer dot first name. Now, have we ever seen this dot kind of syntax or notation before? Well, I asked it in class and some people said no, but that's not true at all. Of course, you have seen dot notation before. For example, you might say the name of your list box dot the text property, the name of your list box dot the text property, or dot the name property, or dot some other property. So yeah, we have used this kind of dot notation syntax before. And this part is always the property that we want to refer to, like the text property or the color property or something like that. So our structure, it looks like, has a first name property because we're using .firstname, .lastname, .age, .email. So apparently we have a first name property, a last name property, an age property, and an email property. So that seems to be what we've created when we set this up like this. Okay? Now, technically, these are not called properties. These are called fields. But it seems like exactly the same thing as before. But it's not. It's almost exactly the same. Okay? But to actually make something called a property, now, if you go back, I don't have my Visual Studio open right now. But if you go back to Visual Studio, and you know, here's the normal Visual Studio window here, right? And down here, no, this stuff is blocking it. But down here, usually, you have something called the Properties window. And that shows you the properties for any particular control that you have, that you've selected. So we've talked about properties many times, and we'd be tempted to say these are the properties, since we're using .firstname, like just here, .text, 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 those are the text property of the text box, of the first name text box, of the last name text box, and so on. This first name text box, this last name text box. So those are properties. We do use the word properties here, and we do access them using the dot notation. Now, these are technically not called properties yet. They're called just fields. Basically, it's like the same thing, but it's in VB.NET, a property has a slightly different meaning. In fact, we're going to learn exactly what it means in about 2 slides. But basically, same thing. Okay, so now what's this? This is a function. And what kind of object does this function take? Does it take integers? Does it take strings? Does it take arrays? Well, we're not sure, except that you are sure because you see what he's putting in here is test customer. And what kind of data type is that? It's a customer. So this function must take customers as the argument type, or the parameter type. Okay? So is that true? Well, is this function something that was written by Visual Studio? By VB.NET already? Did the programmers in VB.NET already write this? Well, no. This is a little program, a little subroutine, or a little method that we write here. And so what kind of argument does it accept? Well, it accepts customers. So you have to feed it a customer. That's how we're defining it, to only accept customer data types. Okay? So that's exactly what we're going to do right here. So we're going to make it accept a customer data type, and then we're going to say to so then the name, we're going to refer to that input by temp, and so we're going to access temp's first name here because it does have a first name. We can also access temp's last name because it has a last name, has age, and email. And what are we going to do with these? You can ignore this me here. Just ignore it. We're going to take this and fill it in to here. So we're going to fill it into here. No, sorry. Here, 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 and here. Now, to explain what that me is, actually this last screen, I tried to put it in here. It obviously didn't show up very well. But you can see it if you check this address up here. He says it's usually optional, but he says the exception is when we're working with what are called shadow variables. A shadow variable is a procedure level variable with the same name as a class level. So here is a class, here, and goes down to here. And here we have a procedure, procedure. And here we have string name here, and it's also here. Now, if you want to refer in here to this variable, remember this one will dominate within the subprocedure. But if you want to refer to this one up here, you put the me in front of it. So it's really not necessary in our case, but he puts it in there anyway. So we have the me variable. We have the me keyword, rather. I'm sorry. Okay. So anyway, we have this here. And so we have this subroutine here, or subprocedure here. And we run it here, and we see that it works. But he says, then what about this one? This wasn't part of our structure, and we didn't fill it in yet. So what can we do? Now we're going to define specifically what we mean by a property. So he talks about adding properties to structures. So then you have to go through a kind of extra bit of work. And basically, the things that you make as properties are the things that you want to be publicly available. So really, even though we made first name, last name, and so on as public, usually they wouldn't be public, and we wouldn't want them to be available to someone. And what we do is we create it like this, but we create it like, where is it? Like this, but we make this private, and then we make each one of them, make a property out of each one of them using this methodology here, and then they would be accessible, but only through the property methodology. Not sure if that makes much sense, but if you set this up, then you can create new properties as well as just fields or members. So what he does is he does that here. He does exactly what he has here, but he does it specifically for name. So he's creating a new property called name, and it's what we call read-only. So you can't, so the user can't change it. And sometimes you want that. You want to protect properties from being able to be changed. So he's setting it as read-only here, read-only, and creating this property. And actually what it's doing is it's returning the first name and the last name together. And so it will look like this. So if you type, if Taro and APU are here, then it'll look like that. So, and the way we access this new name property is like this. So we create a name property, and we access it like this. So the reason they're doing this is because, as I said, usually we won't make these public. We'll make them private. And also that we can do things like make things read-only. So it's kind of an advanced subject, and we're just introducing it here, and you'll study it in much more detail later. So after you finish it, you'll have your form like this. So what we've done here is we've talked about properties and structures.